My presentation is on the topic Counseling Relationship, submitted by Ananya Bhuya, MSW 4th semester, roll number 1, paper Counseling in Social Work, 401. Content: Introduction, Definition of Counseling, Karl Rogers and the Counseling Relationship, Rogers' definition of Counseling Relationship, Conclusion, and the reference. Introduction: A counseling relationship is the connection and the relationship developed between the counselor and the client over time. It is a professional, a meaningful relationship, and this relationship builds with a time period. For example, session by session. It also takes such as weeks, month, and sometimes it might also take a year. And when the client learns to trust the counselor and believes in him, then the counselor and the client develops a meaningful contact between their relationship. It is a feeling and attitudes that a client and a counselor have towards one another and the manner in which those feelings and attitudes are expressed. Through the feeling and the attitudes, some counselors regard the counseling relationship as necessary constructive changes. Many individuals develop their behavior through proper counseling support. Karl Rogers, the founder of person-centered therapy, views counseling relationship as a helping relationship in which the counselor creates an environment that facilitates the process of self-awareness. Most important is the quality of the relationship between the client and the counselor. The counselor offered the qualities, which is known as the core conditions, which consist of empathetic understanding, respect, and acceptance of client's current state of being, his or her congruence, and the genuineness. Definition of counseling. The term counseling is a professional guidance of the individual by utilizing psychological methods, such as collecting case history data using various techniques of personal interview, testing interest and aptitudes. The term counseling is of American origin, coined by the Karl Rogers, who, lacking a medical qualification, was prevented from calling his work psychotherapy. In the US, counseling psychology, like many modern psychology specialties, started as a result of World War II, because in case of World War, many people lost their livelihood, their family members, their comfort zones, and therefore they went through a lots of mental problem. According to the American Counseling Association, ACA, professional counseling is the process of building relationship with individuals that empower them to accomplish mental health and wellness, education, and career goal. It is a collaboration relationship between the counselor and their client. So a counseling basically helps an individual to look after his education, to plan for his careers and for his wellness for a betterment. The counseling relationship is foundational for effective mental health care. A working relationship is a prerequisite for a multicultural conceptualizations as well as a method advanced counseling techniques. The counseling relationship has been considered a common factor for over 80 years, as the relationship is foundational to all counseling theories. Anyone can seek for a counseling and help him or her by themselves by coming towards the counselor and help himself to get a better life. Karl Rogers and the counseling relationship. Karl Rogers was a pioneer of person-centered of humanistic therapy in the year 1940s. Counselors can create an ideal environment for client growth within the context of the counseling relationship through seeking to genuinely understand their clients' experiences and expressing unconditional positive regard. Because his view differs sharply from the psychodynamic and the behavior approaches which suggested that the client would be better help if they were encouraged to focus on their current subjective understanding rather than or some unconscious motive or someone else's interpretation of the situation. So Carl Rogers strongly believed that. Rogers believed that to create the condition for the change of the client, the counselor should be warm, genuine, and understanding. The counselor has to be always genuine with his or her client. She has to understand his problem without any judgmental attitudes. It is considered an equal partnership in which the therapist is aiding the client to find their solution, and this is therefore empowering the client and helps him to find a solution for his problem. Rogers' definition of the counseling relationship. According to the Rogers, in the year 1942, the counseling relationship is comprised of warmth, responsiveness, and unconditional positive regard. This is expressed as a genuine interest in the client and acceptance him as a person. So the counselor has to accept his client as he or she is. Carl Rogers on the counseling relationship. Rogers believed that the client seeks counseling as a result of incongruence. For example, when a client becomes aware that some aspects of what they are feeling and experiencing inside the incongruent with how they are presenting to the outside world, the counselor then strives to be congruent in relationship to the client through genuineness, honesty, unconditional positive regard, and communicating an empathetic understanding of the client's situation. The client becomes very free and humble when he notices his counselor as a genuine person, as a person who do not judge for his or her problem. If the client perceives the counselor as empathetic, then the proper conditions are created for the client to become more congruent and actualize. And when the client finds that his counselor is very frank, then he or she share his problem in depth without any hesitation. The three conditions of Carl Rogers, that is empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. The importance of this relationship, Rogers identified three core conditions that would enable this relationship to work in a therapeutic setting. So these are first the empathy. The first condition is called the empathy, sometimes referred to as a reference. The counselor tries to understand the thought and the feeling as the client experiences them, sometimes referred to as walking in someone else's shoe. Empathy is not the same as adopting your client's values, beliefs, behaviors, or the ways of understanding the world as your own. The counselor has to put himself in his shoe and try to understand his problem so that he can bring up with the solution that is acceptable to the client. Empathy is about seeking to understanding the experience, feelings, and worldviews of another person. You don't have to experience everything that your client have experienced to have empathy. You just need to feel it and place yourself to his position. Empathy involves understanding your client words as they do without imposing your own values, biases, and judgment. A counselor cannot judge or say to his client that he or she was wrong. Number two, congruence and genuineness. The second condition is known as the congruence. This meaning the counselor is genuine and real. The counselor has to be always genuine and real towards his clients so that the client share his or her problem freely with his counselor without any hesitation. This condition is important as it allows the client to build a trusting relationship with the counselor. And once the client finds that his counselor is a genuine and a real person, then then the client will start to trust his counselor. The counselor's congruence can also help defeat negative attitudes or condition of worth that others may have placed on the client. The counselor's warm and genuine approach allows the client to feel valued. This in turn builds self-esteem and trust in their judgment, and after that they can build their favorable relationship. Congruence is a primary attribute for an effective therapist. The congruence refers to the balance between their inner experience and the outer expression. Number three is unconditional positive regard, that is acceptance. The third condition is known as the unconditional positive regard, or UPR for short. Unconditional positive regard allows the client to open up and speak up about their difficulties without any kind of fear of being criticized or judged by his or her counselor. For the client to grow and realize their potential, Rogers believed that it was a vital and valued as an individual. This entailed acceptance of the client by the therapist without judgment. It required that the therapist genuinely cared about the client even when they might disapprove for an action of the client and maintain positive attitude to the client. Conclusion: the purpose of counseling relationship is to assist the individual in counseling to change his or her for betterment. Every client comes to the counselor to make his problem less hesitating or less harming. So she comes to a counselor to make his life better so that he could live or she could live peacefully with a solution and a purpose in life. Such a relationship is as essential as it is oftentimes the first setting in which the person receiving treatment shares intimate thoughts, beliefs, and emotions regarding the issues in questions. And after sharing the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions with his a client, when he or she share his thoughts and beliefs and emotions with his counselor, he gets a solution from the counselor. As such, it is very important that a counseling provides safe, open, and non-judgmental atmosphere where the affected individual can be at ease. So it is very important for a counselor to provide a safe environment, an open environment, and a non-judgmental atmosphere where a harmed person, that is the client, can feel peace and can freely share his or her problem with his or her counselor. Once the counseling relationship is formed, an individual in the therapy might be more inclined to open up emotionally and provide further details about his or her concern. And once the relationship is formed between the counselor and the client, then the client will open up his emotional and provide the depthness of the detail of his or her problem or the consequences. In turn helps the counselor to better comprehend the affected person's point of view, feelings, and motive. And once the client is free with the counselor, then it will become very helpful for the counselor to provide him the solution according to his problem. References: Rogers CR's 1986, Karl Rogers on the Development of the Person-Centered Approach, Person-Centered Review, Rogers CR 1992, The Necessary and the Sufficient Condition of the Therapeutic Personality Changes, Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology 66827, Friedlander FE 1950, of the a comparison of the therapeutic relationship in psychoanalytic, non-directive, and Adlerian therapy, Journal of Consulting Psychology 14636, Watson J.C. 2002, Revisioning Empathy, Rogers C.R. 1957, The Necessary and the Sufficient Conditions of the Therapeutic Personality Changes, Journal of Consulting Psychology 21295, Mary T. 2002, Learning and Being in a Person-Centered Counseling, PCC Books. Thank you so much for listening.